So pop any questions in the chat so we can address them as we go along. And then also we'll have some time for Q&A. It's important that we register for these events to ensure that we get follow-up comms and any future updates or webinars like this that we'll be hosting sent to you directly. And then lastly, a big thank you to you, everyone, for being here. As I understand, time is very precious. We are at a very busy time of the year. We will have the opportunity to ask questions during the session, as we mentioned, and sometime at the end for some more, if you want to take it offline, even for that matter. At this stage, I'll hand over to Zeb to explain our quiz and prize giveaway. Take it away, Zeb.
Thanks, Grant. So during the webinar, we'll have 2 quizzes, and there's a prize for each quiz. So the first one's a Ion Audio Mustang LP turntable. So good addition to the man cave, or could be in your living room or something. Secondly, we've also got a 18-inch portable charcoal barrel smoker. So it's multi-level barbecue grill, which you can smoke your food in. So good summer prizes there. So unfortunately, anyone entering can't work for Ingram Micro or Red Hat. We'd love to be able to give away prizes to our own colleagues, but unfortunately, it's got to go to the partners, which you guys. And it's basically the way we're going to draw it is the people with correct answers we put into a draw. So we'll just do it via the chat. So we'll ask the questions. It'll be nice and easy to answer, and then just put the answers in the chat, and then we'll draw them at the end if time permits. Otherwise, we'll announce the winner after the webinar. Cool. Are you ready to kick off, Grant?
Yeah, let's go. Let's do this. So, what are managed service partners and what are cloud service providers? You know exactly what you do. You're the reason why we're here today. So in a nutshell, a cloud service provider typically manages the infrastructure, whereas a managed service provider can manage anything from the infrastructure to user workloads. So for example, desktop as a service, software as a service, infrastructure as a service, or storage components. The managed service provider can deliver all of the above, as well as a higher level of IT support that may include network connectivity, security, backups, disaster recovery, IT strategy, application support, and virtual workloads. So there's a lot to take into consideration. So what are people saying out there? Our friends at Forrester's did quite a comprehensive research paper recently, and 80% of the respondents or the research came out of facing challenges with multi-cloud management, according to Forrester. So managing multiple clouds can be time-consuming and needs additional resources of skills to manage them all at the same time. So what if you could streamline and simplify managing those cloud services? On the other side, 58% or 58% of them responded by saying that IT ops are frustrated by the time spent on routine tasks. Now, time spent on routine tasks takes you away from the most important tasks that you have at hand. And then also, what if you could make the routine tasks reusable and reduce the amount of time to do these tasks manually? In a nutshell, the answer is automation from Red Hat. Next slide, please. So the catchphrase that we like using from Red Hat's perspective is automation happens when one person meets a problem that they never want to solve again. In IT today, especially in mid-market and enterprise, there's no time to manage all the infrastructure manually for every change or every problem. So automation is really all about creating a reusable playbook or plays for tasks that are run often. Next slide, please. So we've looked at the who's here and who should attend, and we'll dig a little bit about why. And based on research, I guess the next question is how can we deliver our automation technology and the rest of our ecosystem? Next slide, there we go. So we can deliver this via our CCSP program. The Red Hat CCSP program allows cloud hosting system integrators and managed service providers to host and resell Red Hat offerings to our customers on a consumption-based model, be that on-prem, private, public, or hybrid cloud. And as this consumption model works for our customers, we've made the program work for you, our partners. So what's included when you become part of the CCSP program? Few things to point out. you can offer your customer Red Hat solutions on a consumption model, which is quite popular in cloud packages. The CCSP partners use supported hardware and hypervisor environments. You manage the relationship, and when it comes to support, you manage level 1 and level 2 support issues or tickets. You report usage, which is pretty standard, and then of course you maintain the Red Hat support personnel internally. You also certifies public cloud Red Hat images, which you can use. And of course, you provide the end user with continuous access to Red Hat updates. And that's generally when it's using satellite or using RUI, which is Red Hat update infrastructure. So what are the differences really between CCSP and the traditional customer that we have? If you're an existing Red Hat partner already and you're buying subscriptions from us, you'll be the commercial buying program. And if you're a CCSP customer, there's the CCSP program. Just a few differences between the two to highlight. Subscriptions on the commercial buying program, subscriptions must be owned and entitled to the end user. They can't be used to provide services to third parties. They can't be used for infrastructure for CCSP platforms. And of course, they're suitable for customer purchases when doing build and deploy type scenarios or system integrations. On the CCSP side, we've got subscriptions are owned by you, the provider, and you provide those services to the end user. So it's not just a cloud program, and it covers all the service provider use cases from end user to providing the infrastructure. And of course, the flexible billing model, which is hourly, weekly, or monthly. Zib, can you jump into the next slide for me, please?
Yeah, sure thing. So just looking at the consumption model for CCSP. So as Grant mentioned, you've got the ability to charge via hourly, monthly, or multi-year. It's also possible to mix the consumption models within the environment. So for example, you might have a yearly base infrastructure, which is your yearly subscription for your virtualization or your infrastructure. But you might have hourly bursts for additional resources. So if the customer needs a specific VM for a certain amount of time, it might be only up for an hour or two. So it allows you to mix and match that based on the usage that the customer wants. And as you can see, this actually ranges from cloud. So if you're managing the cloud for the customer and you're putting workloads on the cloud, obviously it works anything from hyperscalers to your private clouds. But it also works for IT systems on-prem as well. So where you're actually managing servers or infrastructure on behalf of the customer, either in their environment or within your own. It's all the way through whatever stack you can offer this consumption model, which just allows that flexibility for the customer to not have to pay when they're not using the workloads. So just give you an idea of some of the peers that are out there and current CCSP partners. So there's some global providers, which are your obvious cloud providers like your AWS, your Azure, Google Cloud. There's some more regional providers, which you'll see you might be familiar with, like your Datacoms and Riveras. Then you've got your more sort of managed service providers, which is like your Fujitsu, IBM, Dimension Data. On the telco side, you've got the likes of your telcos in the CCSP model as well, offering subscription-based usage to their customers. And then also ISVs like your F5s and your SAPs as well. So there's a wide range of different partners there. And definitely we see in the mid-market, small to medium, you're looking at more probably the MSP middle portion there, providing managed servers, managing infrastructure and workloads for the customer, or in some cases, obviously on selling cloud services as well and managing them. So to give you an idea of some of the products that Red Hat offers under CCSP, there's the end user consumption type products like your enterprise Linux, your SAP workloads on enterprise Linux, then you've got your middleware platform for your integrations and runtimes and things for your applications as well. So all of these typically would be something you resell to a customer, but under the CCSP model, you're actually just providing it as a service for however long they need and reporting that back to Red Hat at the end of the month. There's also some new sort of provider offerings too. So if you're looking at like a container platform, particularly in that space where everything's, a lot of those workloads and microservices and AIs and things are moving into a container platform, Red Hat's got obviously the OpenShift container platform product. So you can offer that as a hosted service for your customers and allow them access to it so they get the full development environment for their own services as well. So you're essentially managing the platform, providing the access to that to the customer. Or you might be providing infrastructure itself. So obviously you've got Red Hat virtualization platform, OpenStack, storage products, automation products too, which is one we're covering today in more detail. But essentially, obviously, with automation, it can manage anything from the infrastructure hardware to all your switches and things as well. It's not just limited to Red Hat products, but it also means you can have localized instances for your customers, which we'll cover a little bit later as well. Cool. So what we're coming up to now is our first quiz. So what we'll do for the quiz is we'll read out each of the questions, and if you can just note them all down and send them in the chat once you've got the answers there. And then what we'll do is we've got someone on standby to mark them, and hopefully we'll get the prizes announced at the end of the webinar. So the first prize that's up is the Mustang LP turntable. So what we've got for the first question is, if a partner is providing managed services with Red Hat products to a customer, which consumption model is needed? The second question we've got then is, name a global CCSP provider. And the third question was, what percentage of managed service providers face challenges with multi-cloud management? So it's one of those two figures that we had near the start there. So if you like, take a screenshot of the quiz, take your time in answering the questions, and just post them into the chat once you're ready. And yeah, we've got Carla on standby to pull them out of a hat. Cool. Should we give it 30 seconds, Grant, or should we push on?
Yeah, let's give the respondents a time. Maybe they're scratching their heads. I know this is quite a bright group, so they're just writing them all down so they can send them together.
Yeah, I guess the hardest one is probably the percentage, because when you've been looking at numbers all day trying to remember what percentage it was from something near the start of the webinar is always interesting.
Spot on. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll give let's take a screenshot now, if you haven't already got the answers down, and we'll move on.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. You can jump into the next slide, Zeb. So this is probably my most exciting slide that I'd like to talk about today. The latest infrastructure automation platform statistics from Forrester Wave again, and it shows that Red Hat being one of the leaders in this field. So Red Hat has the biggest range of automation coverage across vendors of all top products shown. Others in the top are specific to their own infrastructure products, whereas Red Hat works with almost everything. And if we look at the picture on the left in terms of who the leaders are, I had a chat with Zeb recently, and it's quite interesting that IBM bought Red Hat, Microsoft bought GitHub, and last but not least, we just heard that VMware purchased SaltStack. Something for you to think about if these major organizations are waging their bets on open source. I'd encourage you to get involved or reach out to us. The other important thing for me from the slide is potentially two things. We can commit to you today that if you adopt an automation strategy, your teams can be 68% more productive. 68%. And for me, that is massive, because if you're struggling with resources and you want to make sure that your teams are working efficiently and effectively, that is a number that we're very proud of. And then the one just below it, which stands out for me quite interestingly as well, is that it takes 5 months to pay back the investment. So at this stage, I'll hand you back to Zeb so we can unpack a little bit about automation and Ansible. Go for it, Zeb.
Thanks, Grant. Cool. So I guess the question really is, what is Ansible Automation? So if you're not familiar with the product, essentially Ansible itself is an open source community sponsored by Red Hat. It's a simple automation language that describes an IT environment in what's called a playbook, and then it provides the tool then to execute those playbooks. So then Red Hat repackages those and makes them ready for the enterprise. And there's two kind of major pieces that it has in the product itself, which is Red Hat Ansible Engine, which is a supported product built from the community product. And then there's Ansible Tower, which is taking everything that the engine can do. And typically with the engine, you do command lines and you specify your playbook and you add your credentials for what machine. With Tower, it actually allows you to have a UI, that front end, and a RESTful API where you can take your credentials, add whichever nodes or inventory you're going to be working on, and build it into like templates and then run them through that. So it's an entire framework for controlling, securing, and managing Ansible itself, basically making Ansible ready for the enterprise. So I'll just cover a little bit about what Ansible technologies automate. So Ansible automates technology you already use. So in the cloud space, all the Azure cloud providers have different collections or modules you can use to automate provisioning, whether it's an EC2 instance or a container instance. All the modules that are available already allow you to build the playbooks up around it and use them. So you could go in and deploy a AWS container and an Azure container at the same time through automation, or a VM, or any other workload you need. Same sort of thing with the virtualization and container space. So there's support there for Kubernetes and OpenShift and VMware and Red Hat virtualization. So it's a matter of just building the playbook up to, and then introducing variables, or at runtime maybe asking the user some questions. You got Windows support as well, so you can do ACL files, features, packages. You can do Windows updates and things through automation as well. On the network side, you can do all your VLANs through your switches. You can set up all your networking hardware like your F5 or your Cisco's. DevOps, all those key tools that you see these days in development houses like your Jira, your GitHubs and Jenkins and Subversion, Slack even. All of these are available to automate with as well. And that could be a one step along a long process within that automation play as well. And then monitoring, so all your Nagios and your monitoring tools that you've got, all of those can be automated too, whether it means you're pushing something to it or you're looking at it to get some information. Ansible can allow you to do that, and then automate based on that information too. Operating systems, so pretty much all the operating systems across the board are supported. And the storage space, you can manage those storage providers as well and automate those. There's a large community effort to create more modules, and many of the vendors are writing the modules for their own products to use in Ansible. And then other times the community will be writing them to support APIs within that particular product. Engineers don't have to reinvent the wheel to connect to existing infrastructure and applications to automate. It's all available there. You just got to write whatever play you need to automate. So the idea is you just deploy Ansible, use it, and see what's available through the collections, and start building up some of those automation plays. So just a little bit about the platform as a whole. So when Red Hat sells this product, it's Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform, which is it allows you to automate any IT task. It's simple to understand. There's 3,000 plus supported modules. It's agentless, so this is quite important. There's nothing needs to be installed on the end systems at all. You can just connect it, and whatever mechanism it's got for remote command execution, that's how Ansible connects and runs the plays. So you don't need to install an agent like you do with many other automation systems as well. And enables third parties or events to trigger automation too. So using the APIs, you can have a ServiceNow, for example, on-demand automation plays. So the tower itself is what provides the API. And that's where you configure your inventories and configure your playbooks and your credentials. And what it does is it passes it through the engine, and then the engine's responsible then for connecting to the machines. And as you can see in the example we've got there, you can connect via SSH to anything that uses secure shell, Win remote management. You can connect to that for any Windows devices, APIs, or command line interfaces as well. Particularly in that sort of cloud provider space, you'll have an API it'll connect to and run commands and run your plays. Or in the case of your networking, your switches, sometimes you'll find it's a command line interface. So all of that's supported through the engine. So the engine takes care of the connection and how. Tower just tells it what the device is, and then it goes and does it. Cool. The actual playbooks themselves. So this here is an example playbook. So they're actually they're human readable. This isn't based on any kind of real playbook, but it's just to give you an example of how they're written and how you can read them. So in this particular example, we've got a playbook that's to make his boss a coffee, and the host that it's targeting is his coffee machine. And you can see here the tasks that it's going to run through. So it's just got one task, which is name brew coffee. So it's brew your cup of coffee. Then it's using the brew a cup module to then go and say, I want 100 mils of coffee. It needs to be a triple shot. Needs some sweetener, a bit of sugar, and a bit of milk. And it only happens when the boss is in the office and it's a Monday. So maybe there's a separate play that you've got, or a separate task in there for a Tuesday where he only wants a double shot. So you can split it up based on criteria as well as when to run that section of a playbook. So just to give you an idea how easy they are to read. And then we'll just touch a little bit on Ansible Tower. So it is the easiest way to run Ansible. You don't have to run the commands through the command line, which is, again, more manual processing. With the web console, you can see everything that's running in schedule tasks as well. So some of the things you've got available is audits and logs. You can see who ran what and when. You've got surveys for dynamic inputs, so like variables. So in the actual playbook, if you're saying, okay, we want to make sure it's only using this particular, the user's got to specify what it is, then you can have the variable built into it and show a survey prior to running that playbook. And there's a visual workflow for building and running multiple plays too. So if you wanted to combine multiple playbooks, so for example, a provisioning a Windows server, it might be you got to create the VM, then you got to install Windows on it, and then you got to do some post tasks such as remote desktop enabling most desktop, Windows updates, all those things. You can build it in a workflow so it does one step at a time all the way through that provisioning process. Other things it's got things like user and team-based permissions. It's got AD and LDAP integration. You can dynamically scan growing inventory on your virtualization or cloud, so you don't necessarily have to go in and add every host individually. It can automatically scan and find those hosts. You can store system credentials securely on there as well, so all your connections, your authentication, schedule playbooks to run periodically. It's got a REST API for third-party integration, and it's got a command line interface as well. So that's a little bit about Tower. Cool. So basically now what we're going to do is I'll take you through a quick demo of Ansible Tower and just run some simple playbooks and take you through what the playbook looks like, just to give you an idea of how it works and what you can do with it. So I'm just going to quickly reshare my screen, so please bear with me for one moment. Sorry, one sec. There we go.
While you're busy doing that, Zeb, I just want to say thanks to our audience for responding to the quiz. We've seen some answers come through, so yeah, looking forward to that giveaway.
Sorry, team, just trying to find the right screen so I don't show the wrong thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. So hopefully everyone can see this. I've tried to make it a bit bigger so it's easy to see on the webinar.
Yes.
So basically, this is a playbook that I've created to create a virtual machine through Red Hat virtualization. So essentially, it's creating a VM to run on Red Hat virtualization. It's going to be escalating privileges, so you can do some things around that in the playbook as well. We've got some variables at the start. So if we ran this playbook manually, we'd have to provide the variables, or there's some defaults there as well, just for my local environment. Then we've got some pre-tasks. So the first one we're going to do is log into the Rev environment. So we provide it with the URL from our variables up here. We provide it with username, password, all the authentication bits, and that'll log into the Rev environment. Then what it does is it goes and creates a virtual machine. So the first thing it does is what's the name that you're providing the virtual machine? What are you going to call it? Then you got a template. So this is basically choosing the template that you've pre-configured for that particular virtual machine. You choose which cluster it's going to run on, and then you provide the authentication. So this is your login that you've done here previously. You're just providing that as part of the provisioning. And then you're going to make sure that it's running once it's actually provisioned as well. Then at the end is a post task that it runs, and that's to log out of that Rev environment. So it kills that token or that connection, and then allows it to be ready for the next run or the next thing that you're gonna automate. So this is just a very, very simple playbook. It's probably a little bit more in there than what really needs to be if you're going to be running it, such as the variables. You can have that all as part of your running process, but just to give you an idea of how they're structured. So we could quite easily replace these modules here with the VMware equivalents, for example, and do the exact same thing with vSphere. Cool. So let's jump into our Tower. So this is essentially what Ansible Tower looks like. It shows you the number of hosts you got. It shows you the jobs that have been recently run, whether they've been successful or not. It's obviously green and red, nice and easy to tell. And then you can see what automation plays you've configured under your templates tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down to the one that we just showed in the playbook, which is our Red Hat virtualization create VM. And we can jump in there and we can see that it's going to run it against our RHEL servers inventory. We've got some credentials there for our user accounts to use, and we're limited it to which server we're going to use to actually run that playbook on. So in this particular case, I'm going to go down here to launch. And the first thing it does is it shows you that survey so you can provide those variables. So in this case, I'm going to provide the API location, the cluster, the username, the password, and then I'm going to choose which template I want to provision. So in this case, I might say I want to do a Windows Server 2019. And then we're going to call the VM test win19, for example. Hit next. You can see here all the details, just confirm everything's correct, and then you hit launch. At this point, it takes you into the job, and then you can see the status of that job running. So it's gathering some facts about the machine it's connected to, it's logging onto Rev, and now it's actually creating that virtual machine here. So if we logged into our Red Hat virtualization environment, and we have a look at the VMs that are running, we've now got this new machine spooling up. So you can see here that the image is currently locked, but it's provisioning that machine right now. So let's give you an idea. So while that's running, let's just jump back into here. I'll show you a couple of other bits that are included in Ansible Tower. So you've got the ability to run schedules. So in this example here, I've got a job here to run cloud updates for my RHEL servers. So anything I've got on the cloud, I've got a few free instances on AWS and Azure, as well as some of my virtualization environment. So basically, this is just going to run weekly, and it's going to run every Sunday at 3 a.m. just to make sure that those machines are all up to date. The job that it's running can actually also be seen, so we can see the job down here. So if we want to go have a look at that template, we can click into it. No, it's not. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, let's find the template a different way. So you can go to the templates under here as well, and I'll have a RHEL upgrades job here. So it's looking at our RHEL servers inventory again. It's got credentials. So that's the job that's running on that schedule. So just around these inventory and these credentials here. So inventories are essentially groups of hosts or instances that you want to manage. So in this particular case, you can have dynamic inventories where you connect into a cloud provider or a virtualization environment. So if we jump into our Red Hat virtualization instances, we can see here the current host that we're running, but we can't see a new one. So if we wanted to dynamically update this, every time a playbook runs, it'll automatically update these. But if we jump into sources, we can see that we've got a Rev environment, and we can choose to sync that now if we wanted to manually. So while that syncs, we can actually then jump back over to our hosts tab. And under here, we can now see our new test Win19 machine that's just been provisioned. So it can automatically and dynamically update these. And it can also use the tags that you've got set up too. So if you're tagging things in the cloud or your VMware or Red Hat virtualization, in this case, it'll bring the tags up so you can run plays against specific tags. Next, we've got credentials. So this is just a credential store. So you can choose what type of credential it is, whether it's a machine connection, a virtualization connection, whatever it might be. So you can configure all of those through here. So just as a quick example, I can go credential type. I can go AWS. Here's Ansible Tower. You can go along a bit further. You've got Google Compute Engine, Microsoft Azure Key Vaults. So you've got all these different types of credentials. So typically with local machines, you'll just be using SSH, which is your machine. But obviously you can connect to those dynamic inventories using, the ones that are specifically built for it. One more thing that's worth showing is just those workflows. So if we wanted to do a job that combines many different workflows in the same task, we can basically configure what we call a workflow. And if we have a look at what this looks like, we can see here we've got a particular task which will create a Red Hat virtualization VM. It'll run a Windows 2019 unattended install process. It'll then wait for a connection for that to finish. And we can see here that if it fails at any point, it'll go and tear down those virtual machines again. So it'll go and remove them if it didn't work. However, if it does work, it'll go onto Windows updates, which will do a reboot if we've built it into the playbook. It'll check that they're online again once it's rebooted, and then it will install some common applications. So that might be your Chromes, might be your Git, might be all those key products you'd have installed on a Windows server. You can install a web server and a website as well, so you can pull down from GitHub your website and have it deployed to IIS and have IIS all set up as well under one job. And obviously then that's got a test as well to make sure it's running. And we also got enabling remote desktop on the machine too, just as a separate step to make sure we can remote into that machine if we need to do something manually. So just a bit of an idea of sort of how you can combine these jobs and run them simultaneously, or in a workflow. Cool. So what we'll do now is we'll just jump back through to our job that we ran before, which is our create VM. So if we jump into this here, we can see that it logged in, it created the virtual machine, and then it logged out again from the Rev environment. We can see that it was all successful. We can see what time, we can see who it was that ran it. So if we jump back into our virtualization dashboard here, we can refresh the VMs, and we can see we've now got a freshly provisioned Windows 19 machine. And if we wanted to, we could open the console for that and connect to it, and then start doing our workloads or doing what we need to. Cool. So that's all I've got prepared for today. Grant, I'll flick it back over to you.
Thanks, Deb. A lot to take in, but always worth checking out how the technology works. Just bring the slide deck up when you have a minute, mate.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, automation for our service providers. How do we bring all of this together to make sure that it works and it's easy to use? Next slide, please, Zip. So you're the service provider, and our CCSP program with Ansible Automation makes it really simple. Interesting fact, Microsoft use Red Hat Automation themselves for all their internal infrastructure and for Azure. So not only can it be used for small, mid-market, and enterprise, it can also maintain hyperscalers and global cloud providers. Zeb, back at you.
Thanks, Grant. Cool. So this is an example of how you use Ansible automation for a service provider. So this is where you're managing multiple customers using centralized and local instances of Tower. So in this particular case, service provider is going to be using Ansible Automation Platform. So he deploys an instance of Ansible Tower for customer A. Customer A might be an on-prem hardware customer. He's managing all the networking, security, and the infrastructure for them. So he's going to install that locally within their environment. So you can run all those jobs that he's already automated whenever required, or on schedules too. Customer B, they're a high-performing global business who predominantly use cloud resources. So obviously he installs Ansible Tower on the WAN to then manage their cloud for them as well. So he's got another instance then for that customer, and it allows them to quickly remediate issues or problems that they might have, or provision something new if they need it. And then we've got customer C as an example, as a software development company. They need to be able to automate and provision their own development environments. It's like a self-service, but they also need to have their production servers managed and networks managed by the provider. So they can have access to it, they can provision what they need from a development perspective, and he can also assist them or support them for their production workloads as well. So this model isn't just limited to service providers, so it's also worth mentioning it applies to all global IT teams, or even complex or isolated environments too. You can have that pinhole effect to a Tower instance somewhere local as opposed to having it all, managing everything all over the world. You can have specific instances. And typically you'll find that in governments and finance sectors where you can pinhole to one tower rather than, having to access everything from one location. So what does the Ansible Automation Platform provide? So you get the engine, you get the Tower product as well. And you also get this SaaS-based multi-tenanted automation platform view for all your customers. So you can see what automation jobs are running. You can see where the jobs are running, how often. There's cost calculations too. So you can actually see through the dashboard how much time you're saving, how much money you're saving by running them automatically as opposed to having a manual human input doing the same job. And there's also a central place to manage the content as well. So you get access to the Red Hat Automation Hub, which is all the certified collections and automation plays that are available. You can also then see certified partner offerings too. So you can see SAP collections, you can see F5 collections, all that through the certified options. And then you can do your customer specific stuff too. So that's where you'd actually add your own content or the customer specific content that they need. So it's all available in the hub. And then finally, there's a catalog where you can do like an order and approval process. So a customer can put through an order for a new VM, for example, and you can have someone there and the service provider approving the provision of that. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that we see out in the market today around OS provisioning. So in this particular case, we've got a day one operation, which is to provision a new operating system on demand. In this particular example, using VMware. So we've got Ansible automation there with the collection. We've got ServiceNow, which actually initiates it. So you start the provision in ServiceNow. It initiates that provisioning workflow in Ansible, gets things ready, does some orchestration through satellite. Then it goes and clones the VMware gold image or the template, which then provides the option then to customize that VM. So you get the clone, customize the VM for what resources it needs. Ansible then does the provisioning of the operating system. You can run an OpenSCAP report at the end just to get an idea to make sure that its policies are all compliant. And then it can actually feed back into ServiceNow to say it's now finished provisioning that virtual machine. So this applies to just about any of those self-service or market type processes. Ansible has some sort of play in most of the major providers in that piece. So we've got a day two example here as well. So OS patching on schedule. So you've got a timer or a schedule. It goes to start patching in Ansible. It does a target system health check. So if it fails, it can raise an incident in ServiceNow. Then again, someone can have a dashboard or see that there's an issue has come up. They can go investigate it, or raise a change request to say, right, we're actually going to go and upgrade these machines. It can automatically do your snapshots for your vSphere virtual machines. I can schedule the removal of that snapshot too. Obviously, snapshots can be a bit heavy-handed sometimes, and if you build them up too much, it can take a while. But at least you got that snapshot you can roll back to if something goes wrong. And then you can install the latest updates via whatever content versioning system you're using. So whether that's Ansible doing it straight to the machine or using satellite or Microsoft, you can use all of those as part of the whatever type of virtual machine it is. Then once it's all completed and done, you can close that ServiceNow CR. So you got that record of the start and end process. And it finishes off that patching. Another example over here. So finally, like a day 2 plus automating. So this is where you got all your different teams. So you might have your Windows team, security team, network team, or another team, or like a workload team. All of those can be built into a workflow. So it might be that your security guys will set up something on the LAN. Then you might have, your network guys. You might have the security guys giving the machine a policy, and the Windows team automate the actual provision of the machine. So that's where you can build it into those workflows. So all the teams are contributing to that, to whatever then the business outcome is or customer outcome. Then the APIs allows like ticketing, so you can have ticket processes like we showed before. You can have self-service as well, so that's where you're on demand. Self-heal is actually quite a lot more in depth, especially when you got machine learning patterns or specific things that are logged in a job or a ticket, for example, and you can have Ansible go and inspect that machine and do some self-healing capabilities in there as well. And then obviously you got your provisioning, your CI/CD, so your application development. And then again, compliance is all based in there too, so you can do reporting, drift analysis, make sure that the machines are reaching the desired state too. And that could be anywhere from infrastructure to the actual application that's running, to make sure that it's running in the state it should be. And then obviously Tower pushes all that through and runs it against whatever the target environment is. Cool, I think that's enough for me talking. Grant, back over to you.
Thanks, Zeb. Very useful, and it's good to see the workflows. I particularly enjoyed the demo. So we talk to our partners, we do research as we normally do. We have some feedback from customer success stories, or we look at our global customer tech outlook report that's done every year, and it's done by an independent marketing company. And some of the feedback, just to give you some insight. Ansible Tower has the ability to build once and use many times for many customers, improving our margin on products or projects delivered to our customers. So key thing there to remain profitable and a successful deployment. The lovely lady in the center, Ansible Tower has allowed us to win more business without increasing costs and fast-track upskilling our resources. Third to that, Ansible has given us the ability to provide more visibility, control, capability to our engineers and our customers. And then last but not least, Ansible Tower has allowed us to provide more competitive offerings, incorporating modern approaches, managing networks, delivering better outcomes for us and our customers. And we talk a lot about the complexity with cloud, and we talk a lot about margins under threat. You want to be a profitable business, and you also want to be able to skill people quite quickly across the business. And it's already about that visibility between different teams, whether you're in the security team, the operations team, the networking team, you all have access to the same tool. A bit cliche to say, but one tower to rule them all. I'll leave that there, and I'll hand over to you, Zeb, for the last quiz.
Cool. Yeah, we're getting towards the end, guys. Thanks for bearing with us. So we've got the second prize up now. So again, same sort of process. I'll read out the questions, and if you could put the answers through in the chat, then we'll have Carla on standby to draw the winners. So this quiz is for the 18-inch portable charcoal barrel smoker and barbecue grill. So a good space saver, especially if you don't want to buy one of those long ones. You can just have the one that sits in the corner instead. So in this particular one, so we've got some questions. So the first question is, what are Ansible human readable tasks or scripts called? So what are those things called that you run through Ansible? Second question that we have is, what key application enables the UI and API for Ansible in the enterprise? And finally, what is Red Hat's logo? Hopefully a nice easy one.
You won't have to look far.
Yeah. Just can't make it too hard, right? Cool. Yes, as I said, feel free to screenshot this one as well if you're still answering, and we'll move on to the last couple of slides.
So I think, Zeb, we hand over to our attendees. if there are any questions. The chat box is going crazy with answers, so maybe if anybody wants to ask anything, now will be a good time. JJ, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. I'm sorry to pick on you, my friend, but
No, it's okay.
I would like to introduce JJ to the team. JJ works for Red Hat and he manages the CCSP program. JJ, introduce yourself maybe better than what I've done and maybe just some closing comments from your side. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, thanks, Grant, for giving me a chance to introduce myself. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar. Great webinar. I'm JJ from Red Hat APAC, and I'm looking after CCSP distribution programs and based out of Singapore. And implementing automation in managed service can deliver significant values to you by improving the quality of service, time to market, increasing your profitability, and you can respond to changing business requirements. And most importantly, you can reduce the security and compliance risks. There are many, many use cases available, and we have many success stories. So if you want to get more information, you can reach out to Ingram Micro, your trusted advisor for your digital transformations. Again, with that, thanks again for this webinar and giving me a chance to introduce myself. Over to you, Grant.
Thank you very much, JJ. And it's good having you on board. It was a bit of a surprise. I saw you sneak in there, but I thought I'm not going to let you go without saying hello properly.
Yeah, thanks.
Pleasure. Yeah, the floor is open for any questions. If anybody has any questions, now's a good time to reach out. Give it a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds.
Looks like we've got a question in the chat there, Grant.
Let's have a look.
Yes, so it says, Alex says, how commonly do you see Tower integrated into ticketing solutions and any self-service with end user input? Are there recommended input validation tools that can be used for that? Yeah, so I guess it comes down to the self-service product. We do see a lot, especially with ServiceNow type products, where the workflow, or the provisioning kicks off workflow with Tower. I think that's probably the more common one that we see. In terms of the input validation, typically that's either down to providing pre-configured multi-choice options when they go to do the self-service. Ansible Tower itself can also detect if the inputs are incorrect or correct or incorrect in the actual playbook. So if, say, for example, you went to go set up a self-service option and someone entered something incorrectly, you can have that feedback of, hey, it didn't work because it was incorrect. So you can have that sort of validation at different steps as well. But that also might be a question we could take offline, particularly around the validation pieces, what's the right way. I think a lot of the self-service options do have some validation built into them already, but we might be able to find out a bit more around it.
I've got another question, Zeb. How can we find pricing for different options, example, hourly and monthly? Great question, Tracy. We've got a price list from Red Hat that's published every quarter. So because with Red Hat, there are so many SKUs and so many variables from 1 year, 3 year, whatever the case may be, hourly, monthly, we can put together a budgetary quote for you based on a particular subscription technology. But I'm get my words right. So the price list we don't generally send out only because it's just quite an admin process, and I'm not the strongest in Excel, but it's something that if we work on with you on a particular opportunity, we can give you some guidance and idea. But happy to chat afterwards again.
Yeah, it's sort of worth probably mentioning with the CCSP program, it starts with a quoting SKU. So that's how you actually do the provisioning based on that amount. So that's the first SKU that Red Hat will and what the quotes will look like. But the actual charging SKUs are separate because it happens when you do the reporting. So you report back on different SKUs to what you purchase essentially. But it's not too hard to build a matrix up to say, if it's this particular product, it's the SKU for when you do your reports. So.
Okay. And then I just noticed JJ's put in a success story in the chat with one of the partners, successful partners with Red Hat. So that's for review afterwards. Yeah. If there are no more questions,
I was going to say we've got the two winners. So yeah, if there's no more questions, we'll announce the winners.
dun dun dun. I'll leave that to you, Zeb. You've been doing a sterling job.
Cool. So for quiz number 1 for the LP turntable, the winner that we've got is Alex White Robinson. So congratulations, Alex. And for quiz number 2, we've got Chris Smith as the winner of the charcoal barbecue smoker.
Congratulations, gentlemen. Awesome prizes. We'll be in contact in terms of where you're located and how to get them to you. And we'll try our best to make sure it's before Christmas so that you can either wrap it for someone else or you can show off your new toy to your mates. See Evan typing something. So I just want to make sure we wait and see what happens. Evan says, nice job. Thank you, Evan. And Chris says, thanks, team. It's only a pleasure. We, again, very happy to have you guys on board and join us. We look forward to engaging with you in the future. If we don't see you in person, have a safe, festive time. Have a fantastic new year. And we will see you all back in 2021.
Yeah. Also, I just want to mention we've got some more content coming up on the microsite. So if you want to visit redhat.nzingram.com, you can see some videos that we've already published on there, particularly around containers. Feel free to share them with your customers or use them internally for your own staff as well. And we'll have some more stuff coming up as well as a Christmas video in the next few working days.
I'll share the link to the microsite so that everyone can have a look at some of the stuff and work that we've done for 2020. All right. And on that note, I think we will conclude. There's still 10 minutes left over. Thank you very much, everyone, again. Thanks, Zeb. Thanks, Carla. And thanks for everyone for attending.
Thank you, Grant.